Brilliant. Just to say, if anybody has any questions during the course of the webinar, please do share them in the chat or in the question and answer, and Dan will have a look through them and make sure that we try and answer as many as we can at the end. Next slide, please, Dan. Brilliant. So yeah, the last 18 months have seen a lot of planning go out of the window. You know, there's not many of us, not many leaders who could have foreseen or planned for what we saw happen in the UK and across the world at the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic. But those charities that managed best, particularly at the beginning, were those who had a strong strategy underpinning the decisions that they were making and strong processes to help them be agile and move forward. And I want to be really clear here that yes, whilst as Buzz Lightyear says here, hope is not a strategy, having a strategy is also not a plan. And sometimes I think we can get a little bit confused about those, because after all, we can't predict the future. So we can't plan for every possible scenario. But a strong strategy is about having a clear vision, knowing who you are, knowing where you've come from, and knowing where you want to go. And of course, having everyone from your CEO to the most junior member of staff and your volunteers be very clear on those things and be very bought into the direction of travel for the organisation. So the strategy that you create should not be a rigid plan, but instead should guide your decision making and allow you to be agile and adapt with clear direction and strong principles. Now, 20 minutes isn't very long to give a kind of full strategy development masterclass, but I'm going to do my best to give you 10 top tips for developing and implementing a strong fundraising strategy. So, countdown started. Number 1, please, Dan. First and foremost, know what you stand for. I think it sounds a little bit obvious maybe, but, you know, and as charities, I think, you know, you'd think this was the easy bit, but it's so often the thing that we find most charities that we work with are confused by, because although your organisation may have begun, you know, to achieve a single aim or serve a particular group of people, often this has shifted and adapted as the organisation has grown, and often people follow the funding or follow the audience, and things can start to get a little bit muddy. But now, more than ever, as there are many, many, many causes out there that people can support, there's huge market competition for fundraising. And in particular, and we'll come on to this a bit later, younger audiences are becoming more cause motivated, and they want to align themselves to, you know, very specific direct cause impact. Knowing what you stand for is vitally important. And it's not just about knowing kind of what you do or how you do it. I think it's ultimately about going back to the core of your existence and asking why. So to get you there, try facilitating an internal exercise and do it with multiple groups of people and pay attention to the different outcomes that you get. Ask yourselves, why do we exist? And then once you've written the answer, ask it again. And you might have heard of the 5 whys. Ask why at least 4 more times. Because really drilling down to your core proposition and really agreeing what your purpose is, what your process is, and what your result is, will give you something to come back to again and again and again when making decisions in the future. Number 2, next slide, please, Dan. Know your audience. Anyone who's worked with me in the past knows that I'm absolutely passionate about audience insight. It's really vital to know who it is that's most likely to agree with your core purpose and who has the means to support you, but not just to know them, also to really understand kind of what they believe in and what motivates them. The mistake that we see people making is trying to be all things to all people and ending up being nothing to anyone. You know, trying to spread themselves too thinly, trying to dampen their message slightly so that it doesn't offend anyone. But, you know, once you're clear on your purpose, it's much easier to think about who is most likely to get behind that. Don't be afraid to fundraise from service users. Again, it's a one we're a little bit nervous about sometimes. And although it must be done sensitively, of course, these people are your strongest advocates. So even if those people don't support themselves financially, consider peer-to-peer fundraising through them or through people connected to those individuals, and that could be absolutely fantastic. And like I said, it's not just about knowing who your audience are, it's also about knowing about their behaviours, their needs and their motivations. What makes them tick, what will keep them giving, what will stop them giving. Get out and speak to people. You really cannot be hearing the voices of the people that support you, and actually sometimes hearing the voices of the people that wouldn't support you and asking them why. So whether it's call listening on your telephone lines, or whether you undertake face-to-face interviews, I mean, actually, the world we live in now, so many people are used to using Zoom. It means you can very quickly, efficiently and cheaply speak to people on virtual calls, and you can get a little bit under their skin, and you can give them an opportunity to tell you why they support and what they love and what they don't love about your organisation, and then put what you hear at the very heart of your strategy. Tip 3, don't forget about the future audiences too. So we've known it for a while. I'm sure everybody on the call, I'm preaching to the converted, I feel absolutely certain. But we can't keep relying on the same audiences to fundraise from. So thinking about the people that you know are most likely to support, but stretching that beyond just the demographics that you're normally fundraising from. It's a bit scary, but the oldest millennials are 40 this year. So, they're well into their careers, they're settling into family life. And in theory, pandemic aside, they've got more disposable income than they've ever had previously. They've got a little bit more world experience. They're perhaps likely to have been affected by health issues, maybe supported elderly parents. They feel maybe more connected to children and want to support future generations. There's lots of different angles and lots of different experience that will be opening their eyes to different causes. And according to research in 2018, so it's a couple of years out of date, but it would have only gone in one direction. Millennials donated 30% of the total amount given to charity in the UK, and that made them the largest donor cohort in the country. And 40% of millennials said that they plan to give more in the future. And when that question was asked across generations, that was double the percentage in any other generation. So they're a really exciting audience to fundraise from, as well as Generation Z. And despite being hard hit in the last 18 months, 84% of the Generation Z population donated during the pandemic, and half of them said that they will continue to give. That's huge, that's massive. It shows that when there's something serious happening and when there's a call to arms, people, no matter their age, are able to get up and get mobilised and get donating. So what does that mean? Well, when you're thinking about your strategy, you need to think, not only how do we position ourselves to appeal to these audiences, what products do we offer, what offers do we have for these audiences, and how do we reach them, but also how are they going to engage with us and how are they going to donate to us? You can't expect these younger generations to just give in the same way that we've all become used to. 92% of millennials and Generation Z are willing to give via mobile versus only 44% of baby boomers. And it's not just about going digital. Younger donors want to feel like they're having direct impact, with over 50% of 18 to 24 saying they would prefer to give direct via crowdfunding than to a charity. That's quite a scary statistic, really. They're really looking for that, really direct impact. And then they're a newly empowered generation and they really want to feel in control. So thinking not just about how you're going to give them that impact, but also, how are you going to allow them to donate? Many younger people preferring to give multiple cash donations in their own time when they feel in control of it, rather than committing to typical direct debit giving. So as we build our strategies, we need to be aware of these shifts and changes in behaviour, and we need to think about how our organisations are going to shift and change with these future generations and not against them. So number 4, next slide please, Dan. Understand the facts. So back to getting that strategy in order. We hear it all the time, big data, we're in a data-driven world. It's vital that you use that data to your advantage. And there's so much more available to use in order to inform your strategy. And again, something that we see a lot, is people were waiting for a new data warehouse, waiting for a new system to help give you the information that you need. But actually, when you harvest your data, you can source data really creatively from multiple sources. So not just the numerical data, but also think about other data sources, social media, supporter services, telemarketing. These are huge hubs of tons and tons and tons of information, valuable data about your audiences and about how they see you and how they interact with you. Go wide and think broad. One of the biggest mass participation events that entered the market in the last 10 years was born out of looking at website search terms that didn't return results. You know, it didn't require any complicated analysis. It didn't require anything complicated other than looking at, well, what are people asking us for and what are we not giving them? Obviously, analysis of that data once you've harvested it is really important. So look for trends, ask lots of questions. If there's one thing I could say for starting and working through any strategy development, ask questions, get multiple perspectives, and don't overcomplicate it. So if you've got the resource and skills, obviously modeling can be really helpful. But when you're doing that modeling, think about the least complicated model that's going to help you with decisions, because the worst case scenario is ending up with something that your data analyst team really understand and is really complex and fantastic, but that the rest of the organization can't use. And that doesn't give you any actual insight to make decisions with. And that leads us on to defining insights, because data tells you information, but insight will tell you how to use that information. So layering context and direction onto the data is going to make it useful and help you determine what's actionable. So don't just take it for rote. Look at the business problems you're trying to solve. Think about the core purpose that you've already defined, the audiences that you've already defined, and layer those lenses onto the data to see what it's got to tell you. Number 5, myth bust your story. I love this quote. The most dangerous phrase in our language is "we've always done it this way." With any strategy development, I think it's really important that you spend a lot of time at the beginning to getting under the skin of what are the existing myths in your organization and then busting them. In a consultancy, in a consultancy role at WPNC, it's something that we spend a lot of time doing actually, is just being the outside voice that can come in and that can say, but why? Why do you do it that way? Or why do you think that? Or, okay, that's been tried before, but what's changed since that has been tried? Because there are so many internal myths. And this is the thing when building any new strategy that people often get wrong, is that they don't break those down and they don't start with a clean slate. So you're always building your vision and your direction on top of this kind of cobblestone of internal stories that may or may not be factual or true. So, by this point, if you follow steps 1 to 4, you've got all of the data, you understand the audience, and you've got a clear purpose and a clear vision, and you can use that as a kind of arsenal of tools to help you spend time internally myth busting that story. And that leads us really nicely onto step 6, which is all about gaining agreement, because strategy needs really strong agreement. The days of kind of doing something at kind of at CEO level or with a senior leadership team and then cascading that strategy downwards are absolutely over. We need those same millennials and Generation Z who want to have impact and want to have a say that we just talked about as donors. They're your employees as well. So building the strategy needs to be a collaborative process with every member of the organization. You need to actively involve people early, and you need to involve people often, and you need to get people's buy-in and belief in your process. And I appreciate that might seem a bit crazy, or it might feel a little bit kind of big initially when you start this process. It feels time consuming and it feels potentially expensive in order to get everybody's opinions, but there are ways to do it, and a survey most probably won't cut it. But much like with the audience, hold listening sessions, let people's actual voices be heard, help people feel that they've had something to contribute. And that's also another fantastic source of data. The people who are speaking to your supporters and your fundraisers on a day in, day out basis, they know the most about those supporters and those fundraisers. They hear the questions, they know what's going on. So listen to what they have to say. Facilitate workshops, show people, what you hope to achieve, get their buy-in, get them to help you shape that vision, and have discussions and challenge and question, and make it a safe space to do that. Allow yourself to be vulnerable in this process, and that will really allow people's voices to be heard. And when it comes to the kind of collaboration on the opportunity areas and ideas, once you've defined the core vision, once you know the direction of travel, once you know what you need to achieve as an organization, you've got your audience thoughts, and you're going to start looking at opportunity areas and ideas. How are we going to execute this strategy? How are we going to move us forward? Ask for ideas from your employees, ask for feed-in and ask for feedback. And that's really important. Number 7, plan for the unknown. Well, I mean, I feel a little bit stupid sat here saying this today, you know, after the last 18 months that we've had, you know, we couldn't have predicted COVID, or could we? And I don't mean the virologists and the health scientists. I mean us in our charities, in our fundraising organisations. Could we have predicted the potential loss of income that we've had in the last 18 months? Some of the challenges that the loss of event fundraising, for example, struggles with unemployment. Could we have predicted that? Well, maybe not exactly, but we can plan to be agile. Oh, I've just seen Heather says she can't hear me very well. Is anyone else having that problem? Is that better? Yeah, I think I was putting my hands over the mic. I'm really sorry. Okay, I'm going to keep going. Sorry about that. What I was saying was that I'll just go back a couple of seconds. I was saying that, you know, whilst we couldn't have predicted exactly what was going to happen with COVID as a sector, we might have been able to predict a little bit about some of the scenarios that might have happened. And a strong strategy will absolutely plan for the unknown. So there are kind of 4 things that you can do for that. The first one is scenario planning. I'm sure you've all seen it before, or if you've not, Google it. You can have a look at risk planning and think about what are our known unknowns, what are our unknown knowns, what are our known knowns and our unknown unknowns. And you can create a little grid and you can have a think about the different things that might happen and really push yourself. You know, what happens if our whole volunteer force comes down with a mystery illness? What happens if this happens, if this happens, if that happens? And scenario plan those thoughts. You can put in place processes and structure. So know what you would do in an emergency situation. If there was suddenly an external force like COVID, you know, if there was suddenly something happening in the external world that was going to really threaten your strategy, was going to threaten your organization's future, what would be the process and what would be the structure that you would follow to address that? And having that in place and planning that in advance is going to be really helpful, because then when you get to that point, you can hit go. You can say, okay, we're at this point, we're going to follow this process, and this is how we're going to deal with the situation, and this is who's going to be involved in that. But crucially, have flexibility and agility. It comes back to what I was saying at the beginning. No strategy is a fixed, rigid plan. So from the beginning, make sure you're clear on your direction of travel and what you want to achieve, but be willing and accept that how you get there might not be the way that you're expecting it to do. And for that reason as well, you know, yes, plan 3 or 5 year strategies, but please update them every few months. You know, do relook at them, do be flexible, do be agile, and see how you might reach that vision. And that's why I've put vision there as number 4, because it's the most important thing. If you are really clear as an organisation on what is important to you, what you are trying to achieve, and how you might best get there, then everything that happens comes back to that. So if something happens that you're not expecting, you need to regroup, you need to relook at your vision, remember where you're headed, and remember the thoughts that you had, that, you know, the insights and the data that you've got, and try to plan a new path. You know, if you were on a mountaintop and you were trying to get home, you wouldn't suddenly start going in a completely different direction. You would look at where you're trying to head and you would try and plan a different path to still get there. And that's what's really important with this strategy. Number 8, please, Dan. Following on quite nicely from that is the idea of preparing to fail. You know, you probably hear it so much from agencies, from consultants, from people like me and the rest of the group PNC, you know, talking about a test and learn approach, but it's so important. You know, if you want to empower people to take risks and to be brave, you know, things might go wrong, and that has to be okay. If your strategy will allow it, you know, if you've got the funds and you can, set aside investment that you expect no return from. You know, allow people to experiment and reward failure and learning. You know, make yourself have a culture where that is okay. And it has to start from the tiniest little thing through to some of the biggest failures that might happen. Allow that culture of experimentation to happen and build it into your strategy. Make it part of what you're trying to achieve, because no path to success is a straight line. It's always a little bit wiggly and a little bit confused, and it's really important to give yourself as an organization the space to do that, because you will not nail that strategy the first time round. You know, that vision or those pillars, you know, I really hope that when you sit down and you write this and you work on it together as an organization, that fundraising strategy is 80% there, but it might not be, and you have to use the learnings that you get and the failure that you have in order to keep refining and keep moving yourselves forward towards that vision. Number 9, don't leave the strategy on paper. So, you know, back to kind of involving people in the beginning. It's also important that you involve people in the implementation of this strategy, because no strategy is going to be successful unless every member of your organization knows what they need to do differently in order to move you forward and closer to achieving that vision. So educate people, hold sessions that explain the rationale. Don't just tell them what they've got to do. Explain how you've got there. Bring supporters' voices into that story. Show people the data and help them understand where you've come from and where you're going. Bring them on that journey with you. And you'll know that you are ready to kind of begin to execute your strategy when all key stakeholders can articulate that strategy, when they all believe that it will lead to success, and when everybody feels like they've got the right people and the right processes to pull it off. And when you have that confidence, you can really, really, really fly. So measure how it's going, you know, let people know, tell them how they can adjust what they're doing, and reward people who do it well, you know, whether that's building it into your PDR process, you know, getting people to set their objectives against strategic aims, or whether that's, you know, regularly checking in on KPIs and rewarding people who are helping you move forward. Make sure that you're reinforcing the behavior that you want from the organization in pushing that fundraising strategy forward, and not just leaving it on paper. And finally, number 10, measure and learn. I've kind of hinted at this as we've gone along, but there's absolutely no fixed fundraising strategy. There never should be. It can't be a fixed thing. The world moves too fast. Our audiences are moving too fast. Your organization's needs are going to move too fast. It has to be a flexible and adaptable process, and it has to be a flexible and adaptable set of principles. This is a very simplified version of a diagram that we use with lots of our clients. But what we do is we build together our fundraising strategy. That becomes the kind of cornerstone of different work streams of work. And as those different work streams go, they flow, all of the principles and the thoughts and the KPIs come out of the strategy and flow into those work streams. And we measure as we go. So we don't wait till the end of the work stream and then take learnings. We keep measuring, and this becomes a constant flow of information. So measurement against clear KPIs, knowing exactly what success should look like, and knowing where failure is okay, and building those learnings back into the strategy. Have a team of people who kind of really can own that fundraising strategy, of people who feel very, very passionately about it and who can really own the KPIs, and meet regularly. Get feed in of data from the different areas of work, from your different fundraising teams, and see how things are going and the success that you're having, and then feed those learnings back into that strategy and adapt it and grow it every time. Whew. So there we go. That was 10 very quick fire top tips. I think I've just looked at the time. That might be approximately 21 minutes. So apologies for keeping you over. We're going to take some questions, but just in case anyone drops off, I just want to say a huge thank you for joining us for this in the last of 4 webinars that we've done. It's been really fantastic, and I think I saw Dan saying in the chat earlier, but we are going to send links out to all of the recordings. So do please share them far and wide. please feel free to add any questions in the Q&A box about this one. And look out for some more webinars in a similar way, some more quickfire tips that we plan to show and have in the autumn as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Claire. That was great. Lots of really useful and practical things to apply, hopefully, in people's organisations. Are there any questions for Claire? I think a few people have to drop off as it's just coming up to 10 o'clock. There aren't any questions in the Q&A at the moment, but perhaps we'll just wait a couple more minutes. But other than that, like Claire, can I just say thank you for attending, if you've attended more than one of the series too. It's been great to have you. I think everybody has to go. Well, thank you very much, Claire, also, and I'll see you very soon. Hopefully see the rest of you in the autumn.
Thank you.